Okay, so welcome everyone to IP Law. This is the second last presentation, and we are in week 10. This week's presentation was on the very interesting topic of patenting transhuman technologies. And as you all would have noticed from the readings, a hotly debated area of IP law, somewhat scary. No, some of those chimeras kind of make you a little queasy to look at, but yeah, a very interesting area of law. Tonight, what we are going to have is a presentation where the presenting team are speechwriters for a science minister who's proposing a new bill. This bill is quite controversial, and it's going to allow the patenting of transhuman biotechnology, specifically optimized human cell lines and DNA sequences and human-animal chimeras. So they're going to convince us that we should be able to patent these beasties. And here presenting tonight, we have Bianca Hampson, we have Kim, we have Joselito, and we have Nadine. And who would you like me to hand over to, guys?
It's me.
Okay, Nadine, let's go with your presentation.
Hi everyone, my name is Nadine and today I'm presenting with Kim, Joselito and Bianca. Our topic this week relates to patenting transhuman technologies and has led us to consider the politics of biotechnology. As a group of speechwriters for the Minister for Science, we were tasked with preparing key research to plan a speech for the Minister. The speech is about a new bill which will allow for patenting things such as synthetic optimized human cell lines, DNA sequences, and human-animal chimeras. As we look to our future and evolving beyond our current physical and mental limitations, there are limits to how much can be achieved by low-tech means, such as education, philosophical contemplation, and moral self-scrutiny. By allowing patentability of synthetic DNA, there will be an incentive for corporations to invest in new research and development. These developments may lead to many exciting things ranging from life-saving medical uses to physical and/or athletic enhancements, just to name a few. This is because new biotechnologies promise the ability to synthetically modify the human genome. Not there, the possibilities are endless. Because of this, the Minister is eager to embrace these technologies and make Australia an incubator for synthetic and transhuman gene innovation. Biotechnological innovation has been viewed by countries around the globe as the cornerstone of our future. It is anticipated that it will underpin our economy and provide solutions to key problems of human and animal diseases, as well as aging populations, also through to fuel alternatives and food security. Sectors such as regenerative medicine, gene editing, 3D printing, and digital health solutions are providing staggering new possibilities to improve our quality of life. But before we even look at quality of life, we must look at life expectancy itself. According to the latest statistics published by the Australian Bureau of Statistics, there is an annual death rate of approximately 160,000 deaths in Australia. The leading cause of death, being heart disease, is responsible for 20,000 deaths in itself. Other leading causes include various types of cancer, diabetes, influenza, pneumonia, and disease of the liver. Another alarming issue is the increasing need for organ transplants in Australia. Approximately 1,400 people are on Australian organ transplant waiting lists at any time, and where transplant patients become impatient, it is reported that they look to buy in black market organs. Black market organs coupled with risky transplant procedures do not always have a positive outcome. Often transplant recipients endure medical complications during and/or after the procedure, and in some cases do not survive. By developing our medical technology, we can combat disease, find solutions for transplants, extend our life expectancy, and look to leading more full and enhanced lives. We can improve our memory and other intellectual abilities, refine our emotional experiences, and increase our subjective sense of well-being. Why wouldn't Australia want to make headway on this? To fully understand how the Minister's Bill clarifies our current position, it is necessary to first understand the role of the patent in its current status, which Kim will discuss in detail momentarily. To give a basic overview, a patent is exclusive rights to something, such as synthetic DNA, and would be given to the relevant claimant. Once granted a patent, the holder dictates how synthetic DNA can be used in both commercial settings, such as clinical genetic testing, and in non-commercial settings, such as research. This is for a period of 20 years from the date of the patent. Under existing legislation, to qualify as patentable, an invention must be new, not secretly used and non-obvious, that is, involve an inventive or innovative step. The invention must also be useful, a manner of manufacture, including a device, substance, method, or process, and within a class described by patent law. The Patents Act, however, as it stands, explicitly prohibits subject certain matter from patentability, which includes human beings, plants and animals, and biotechnological processes for the generation of each. On first blush, synthetic DNA appears to be somewhat of a grey area. In 2013, in the American case of the Association for Molecular Pathology and Myriad Genetics, the Supreme Court of the United States ruled that human genes cannot be patented in the US because DNA is a product of nature. The court decided that because nothing new is created when discovering a gene, there is no intellectual property to protect, so patents cannot be granted. The Supreme Court's ruling did allow DNA manipulated in a lab as eligible to be patented because DNA sequences altered by humans are not found in nature. The court specifically mentioned the ability to patent a type of DNA known as complementary DNA or cDNA. And this synthetic DNA is produced from the molecule that serves as instructions for making proteins called messenger RNA. However, in 2015, a case involving the same company, Myriad Genetics, was heard in the High Court of Australia. This case related to the patent of the BRCA gene. In Darcy v. Myriad Genetics, there was debate over claims to methods of diagnosing a predisposition for breast and ovarian cancer, as well as claims to isolated nucleic acids related to those methods. The claims to the methods were not an issue, rather it was whether under Australian law, claims to isolated nucleic acids were a manner of manufacture and therefore patentable. The High Court found that despite this formulation of the claimed invention, its substance is information embodied in arrangements of nucleotides. The information is not made by human action, it is discerned. Since the decision, the Commissioner of Patents has published its practice in determining patentability of alike subject matter. The practice states that isolated, naturally occurring nucleic acid molecules, whether DNA or RNA, human or non-human, coding or non-coding, are clearly excluded because in substance, they can only be considered as a claim to genetic information that is not made. It further states that DNA and synthetic nucleic acids, where they merely replicate the genetic information of a naturally occurring organism, are not patentable. Our new bill, however, sees the introduction of a provision to the Patents Act, which deals specifically with patentability of biotechnological inventions. This will therefore allow synthetic DNA and the lab to be afforded the usual protections in order to drive investment and develop our future. In saying so, however, there must be an extent to which we control or confine transhuman technologies. This is because when we look at how we define ourselves and evolving beyond our current physical and mental limitations, we must manage the risk of not going too far. In that sense, Kim will discuss the parameters we intend to put in place to ensure inventions which offend community expectations are not granted patentability. Hosts Alito and Bianca will then further discuss these moral and ethical issues and our considerations of such. On that, objections that are based on the idea that there is something inherently wrong or immoral in using science to manipulate human nature must be weighed against the potential enormous benefits that could come from genetic technology. To use the words of Nick Bostrom, there may well be some negative consequences which we will not foresee, though of course the mere existence of negative effects is not a decisive decision not to proceed. Every major technology has some negative consequences, and only after a fair comparison of the risks with the likely positive consequences can any conclusion be reached. In this case, with the necessary parameters in place, the bill must move forward so we can create our future, a better future for all. I will now hand over to Kim to further discuss the role of the patent.
Patents in the forms of letters patent were originally granted by the monarch directly before being replaced by the Imperial Statute of Monopolies in 1624. The Australian Patents Act of 1990 still references that Imperial Act, stipulating that patentable inventions require a manner of manufacture within the meaning of Section 6 of that now 400-year-old statute. The 17th century, when it was written, was a time of great invention. The steam turbine, barometer, and pendulum clock were all invented. So Sir Isaac Newton invented the first reflecting telescope in 1668, and a French Benedictine monk named Dom Perignon invented a drink called champagne. These types of inventions fit neatly within the concept of manner of manufacture. However, in the centuries that have followed, new fields of innovations have developed, such as biotechnology, which would have been inconceivable at a time when science itself was in its infancy. So although the legal question considered by the courts when presented with an invention is still whether it is a proper subject of letters patent according to the principles which have been developed for the application of Section 6 of the Statute of Monopolies, that question will be answered according to the common law methodology, which has resulted in a widening conception of the notion of manner of manufacture, which has been a characteristic of the growth of patent law. The widening conception is a necessary feature of the development of modern patent law as new technologies are discovered which would otherwise fall outside the boundaries of patentability set out by previous case law. Patent law has been described as an act of economic policy, the objectives of which are the encouragement of industry, employment and growth, rather than justice to the inventor for his intellectual precipitance. Patents confer limited but valuable monopolies in return for the disclosure of an invention. Upon expiration of the invention, it is available to the public at large, which drives innovation and further development, both scientific and economic. Patents are not strictly required to ensure scientific progress. A significant portion of scientific research is funded by government, without the inherent cost benefit restrictions of corporate research. However, without patents, much invention would be secret and innovation would be significantly curtailed. Biotechnological research requires significant financial and time investments. Biotechnology investment in Australia alone is in excess of $80 billion. Such research is an international endeavour, and investment in that research will be made in jurisdictions not only where there is ready access to quality researchers and facilities, for which Australia and many competing advanced economies can make a claim, but where there is legal certainty around the financial consequences of that investment. Patents play a significant part in that equation. Only patents provide surety that financial reward will follow after such significant investment should a discovery or more properly an invention be made. In Australia, Parliament has left to the courts to carry out a case-by-case development of patentability according to the common law method in a representative democracy. However, in 2015, the High Court ruled that isolated DNA, specifically the gene sequence BRCA1, which is a genetic marker of susceptibility to breast and ovarian cancer, was not a patentable invention, as it did not satisfy the requirement of manner of a manufacture. This decision was seen by many as a victory, ensuring testing for specific mutations of the BRCA gene would be readily available and affordable. And this is true, however. Such optimism is short-sighted. Without the protection of patents, investments in such research for other cancers and other debilitating diseases will be significantly reduced. Private companies, such as Myriad Genetics Incorporated, will be less willing to invest their shareholders' money in research which they cannot provide a return on investment. Private investment is crucial to scientific research, and this bill will ensure that Australia is an attractive investment location for biotechnological research. In determining the appropriate policy settings for the patentability of biotechnology, we have closely examined the models adopted internationally, particularly by the European Union and the United States, which are world leaders in biotechnology and some of our largest trading partners. Consistency, if possible, with major foreign jurisdictions will assist in attracting foreign investment and collaborative research. We intend, through implementation of the bill, to adopt the EU model for biotechnological inventions. Therefore, while the human body and the simple discovery of one of its elements, including a sequence or partial sequence of a gene, is not patentable, an element isolated from the human body or otherwise produced by means of a technological process, including a sequence or partial sequence of a gene, may in fact constitute a patentable invention, even if the structure of that element is identical to that of the natural element. We do not intend to simply open the floodgates to all research in areas such as human-animal chimeras, for which concerns are reasonably held. Australia already has in place significant protections and restrictions on biotechnological research. To that end, we intend to add an additional protection, a morality clause, which will be administered by an independent statutory body. Such a review will ensure that patents are not provided to inventions which offend community expectations. Applicants dissatisfied with the decision of the statutory authority will be provided with an avenue of appeal through the Administrative Appeals Tribunal and the Federal Court. Bianca will provide details of the importance of keeping questions of morality separate from the intellectual property issues. I will now hand over to Joselito, who will discuss ethical concerns surrounding biotechnological research.
Yeah. The potential ethical issues that I have considered may have impact on the proposal to patent transhuman technology under Section 50 of the Patent Act, which provides that inventions under patent applications must not be contrary to law, and Annex 1 to Article 7, Subart 2 of the Patent Agreement, suggests that inventions that are illegal are not patentable. Hence, this issue must be discussed and addressed.
I'll just stop you there for a moment. I think we are experiencing a bit of a technical glitch because there is a really severe echo with your mic. Do you want to just test it again for me?
Yeah, hang on.
There we go.
Is there an echo or?
No, now we're good. Now we are good. Yes, I'm getting feedback now. The others can hear you, so we're good. I just didn't want to keep going if we couldn't understand what you were saying. That's all.
All right.
Okay, so pick up from where you left off, Joselito. Sorry about that, but we couldn't understand.
So the ethical issues associated with the programming of mature stem cell and injection of this stem cell into animal to produce human chimera are the following. First, possible human cloning from reprogrammed mature human cell or induced pluripotent stem cell. Second, welfare of animal. And third, humanization of animal. While the development of iPSC addresses the ethical concern over the use of embryonic stem cell in stem cell research, which involves the destruction of human embryo, there are ethical and legal issues associated with iPSC itself. iPSC is not considered to be human being or potential human being within the meaning of Patent Act Section 18, subsection 2, according to Australian Patent Office Manual of Practice and Procedure. However, it is possible to create embryo from iPSC because pluripotent stem cells, while not capable of producing tissues that are necessary for the development of fetus, they are capable of differentiating into almost all types of cells found in human. To address this potential ethical and legal issue, it is necessary to introduce in Australian legislation the prohibition of creating embryo from iPSC or any reprogrammed human cell, particularly by amending the Prohibition of Human Cloning and Reproduction Act 2002. The current act does not have any provision that prohibits the creation of human embryo from reprogrammed human cells such as iPSC. The ethical issues associated with the production of human-animal chimera revolve around the welfare and humanization of animal. In relation to ethical concern over the welfare of animal, there are codes of practice that must be observed to ensure that pain and stress that the animal may experience during the research is avoided or minimized. Section 3 of the Australian Code for the Care and Use of Animals for Scientific Purposes provides the principle for supporting and safeguarding the well-being of animals used in research. One of the principles states that animals have a capacity to experience pain and distress, and if the procedures and conditions in research environment cause pain and distress in humans, these procedures and conditions also cause pain and distress in animals. There are also legislations with the object of protecting the welfare of animals used for research purposes. For example, the Animal Research Act 1985 New South Wales and the Animal Care and Protection Act 2001 Queensland are intended to protect the welfare of animals used in connection with scientific research. In relation to humanization of animal, I'm going to use pig as an example of animal for the purpose of illustrating the potential ethical issues associated with human-animal chimera. To understand the ethical concern over the humanization of animal, it is necessary to determine whether the injection of human iPSC into animal could humanize the animal brain and give animal the consciousness that human possesses. This is a valid ethical concern. However, it is very unlikely that human iPSC, once injected into animal, humanizes animal brain. The short gestation time of animal, for example, the pig's gestation time is 1/3 of human's pregnancy, does not allow the full development of human's neural structure in pig. The risk of humanizing animals' brain can be prevented by setting the maximum limit of human cells in pig's brain to ensure that human cells do not outcompete or colonize the pig's brain cells. iPSC can also be genetically modified to prevent it from differentiating into pig's neural structure. Injection of human iPSC into animal could have an effect on the physical appearance of animal. For example, a pig embryo with human-like hand that could raise issue about human identity. However, the risk of seeing the birth of pigs with human feature is expected to be very low if the human cell injected into pig is lower than 1% of pig's blastocyst. The risk can also be avoided by allowing only the fetus without any undesired human feature to term. We recognize that there are potential ethical and legal issues associated with transhuman technologies, particularly with the production of human-animal chimera. But we will not fully understand the consequence of these issues, and we will not be able to perfect the technology unless we allow the research to progress. I will now introduce you to our last presenter, Bianca, who will discuss the point of views of relevant stakeholders and comparison between morality and IP law in relation to the proposed technology.
There are many interest groups related to the patenting of transhuman technologies. One of the most important are the scientists, researchers, doctors, pharmaceutical and biotech companies, and investors. The medical industry is beholden to the research and development of new technologies. Between them all, this group have improved the lives of billions of people already, just in modern times, from the HeLa cells discovery in the early 1950s, which was responsible for such medical advances such as the polio vaccine, chemotherapy, and IVF. Very recently, Harvard University and researchers at the Boston Children's Hospital developed a soft robot that fits around the heart and helps it beat, potentially opening new treatment options for people suffering from heart failure. Obviously, this group has an enormous interest in improving patenting legislation for their benefit. Without the large funds required to research and develop these new biotechnologies, they are neither motivated nor able to research. Patents give investors the opportunity to recoup the funds used to research and develop the object of the patent. The general public will always have a view regarding legislation changes, especially when their morals are involved. However, sometimes a person's morals will change depending on the circumstances. I'm sure you would all agree that a person will ignore a personal immoral if it meant that a new and controversial technology would, for example, save the life of your child. Researchers at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia have successfully created an artificial womb in which a premature lamb was able to be kept alive for long enough to be able to develop in a natural manner. These experiments paved the way for improvements in paediatrics with the aim of preventing the premature birth of babies and therefore reduce the health effects associated with premature birth. Disability groups, I'm sure, will be keen to see improved technologies which would benefit their members. Where once a prosthetic leg was a wooden, ill-fitting peg leg, there are now amazing advances where a small computer implant can help a person walk so seamlessly with the aid of a robotic leg, which in turn allows that person to become a much more mobile, pain-free, useful and employable tax-paying member of society. The US ex-President Barack Obama once said, when referring to the chance to exceed technological advances made by other countries, that we need to seize these opportunities before we miss them. It is argued that technology, unbridled, could destroy our society as we know it, which is precisely why it needs to be safely regulated and legislated. Transhumanism is inevitable. It's already happening and could potentially have some unintended consequences. But biotechnological advances will also bring power, control, and efficiency for those involved. The soldiers of the future may be inbuilt with an immunity to biological warfare, such as an anthrax attack. North Korea, for example, is in danger of causing a new world war, and no one really knows what transhuman technologies could have been used on their soldiers. Sporting bodies and the fitness industry have great interest in transhuman technological advances. Ever since the ancient Olympians, elite athletes have desired to be the fastest, the strongest, the best, for the purpose of entertaining the masses. Footballers would like to be able to kick higher and farther. Bike racers would like to have more stamina. At the recent Olympics, too many records were broken, and it was suspected that some athletes took advantage of temporary genome changes to improve their performance. The beauty industry will be most interested in any plastic surgery advances that may help their clients, both for the mental aspects and the physical improvements if possible. The arguments against plastic surgery are not relevant in this forum. However, those that will benefit from it should be able to do so. Another form of entertainment is through computer games. New advances in technology have allowed a person to put on a small helmet and move objects on a screen just by thinking about it, without even lifting a finger. These advances, along with the new virtual reality, are a new form of entertainment, and there we can only imagine where the next road to entertainment could lead. Animal rights activists will be opposed to any transhuman technologies which may compromise or harm any animals, and this includes, of course, at any stage of the research and development. But Joselito has already spoken about these issues. Religious critics will, of course, be loudly opposed to any transhuman technologies. However, one must remember that there are many different religions, all with their own ideas and level of transhuman tolerance. For example, compare the likes of the Mormons to Scientologists. There could not be two more opposite views. Some commentators have suggested that Christianity as we know it today will not be able to keep up with technological changes and will need to go underground. And on the next slide, Christianity holds the ethos to heal. Their general underlying belief is to help others, and anyone familiar with the Christian Bible will recall the stories of Jesus healing the sick. Christian hospitals and missionaries provided crutches for patients in the early days, and wheelchairs. They should not oppose these pattern changes too loudly for fear of going against that belief. Transhuman technologies are first and foremost about healing people. I have already mentioned the need to be on par in relation to the defence of our country and combating the threats from others. Tightening patent laws will help to regulate and control transhuman technology. Although there may be some worry about the softer legislation option mentioned by Nadine, the development of a regulatory body to oversee the research and development of new transhuman technologies will do so. Any privacy concerns relating to gene patenting, as occurred in the Heller Cells case by Henry Lack's family, should be improved through this new legislation and through the application of a regulatory body. And on the next slide, we will see, after all this discussion, the question is, how can we separate the moral questions from the legal intellectual property arguments for transhuman technologies? Generally, the answer is we can't. Our country's basic rule of law is based on morals, as well as having international obligations under the TRIPS agreement. Unfortunately, transhuman patenting was not discussed in the recent 2016 Productivity Commission inquiry report into current intellectual property reform. But an earlier 2014 Genes and Ingenuity report by the Australian Law Reform Commission extensively discussed and made reform recommendations regarding gene patenting, some of which I shall refer to shortly. If those recommendations had been taken by the government then, we probably would not be seeking reform today. So the moral argument is, as we all know, morals are governed by social and cultural norms, but may differ among religions. Morals also change to reflect changes in society. What is regarded as immoral today may not be so tomorrow. For example, the nuclear bomb, a morally reprehensible invention, has since been repurposed into a sustainable, renewable energy source. Agree or not, but one cannot deny that the repurposing has allowed millions of people to have access to electricity, lifting them out of the worst poverty. Morality is a fluid concept, and we must recognise that for many people, the idea that private companies may hold rights over human genetic material is gravely abhorrent. And while many intellectual property lawyers and patent attorneys could argue that morality has no place in patent law, there is no basis for such assertion. Moral values are persuasive in the law, and patent law is not immune from moral considerations, according to Mark Sommerfeld in his dissection of the Myriad case. And now we move on to the IP argument. Technology is already developing so rapidly around the world that we are at risk of being left behind. There is a race going on between countries to be best, both in the marketplace and on the battlefield. Patents can advance human knowledge by encouraging socially valuable innovation that would not have otherwise occurred. The Stockholm Network Initiative has shown that the strength of a country's IP laws will have an effect on the country's economy and their level of power in the world marketplace. To encourage investors to come here and spend their money, we must have laws that reflect their business requirements, and reforming the patenting laws for transhuman technologies will have that effect. So far, Australian courts have generally suggested that the issues related to morality and patent law should be determined by Parliament as opposed to judges. In other jurisdictions and internationally, there is a concept of morality written into their patent legislation. According to the European Patent Office, the concept of morality is said to be related to the belief that some behaviour is right and acceptable, whereas other behaviour is wrong. This belief being founded in the totality of accepted norms, which are deeply rooted in a particular culture. However, in the 1995 case of Howard Florey and Relaxin, the opposition division of the EPO specifically rejected the relevance of the exception in that case and held that materials isolated from the human body were outside the scope of the morality provision as a matter of interpretation. It has been argued that the patent system may not be an effective mechanism for dealing with social and ethical considerations because it was not designed to address such issues. It was also advised that patent officers and examiners have no special authority in philosophical or moral matters, as examiners are chosen for their expertise in a particular scientific and/or technical field. As well as international jurisdictions, the earlier ALRC recommendations and a number of commentators have included the notion of developing a regulatory body to aid in the separation of moral questions from patent law as a remedy for these arguments. And now I'll hand over to Nadine for a conclusion.
Thank you, Bianca. So in conclusion, every day that the introduction of effective genetic enhancement is delayed is a day lost of individual and cultural potential, and a day of torment for many unfortunate sufferers of diseases that could have been prevented. Seen in this light, proponents of a ban on patenting biotechnology must take on a heavy burden of proof in order to have the balance of reason tilt in their favour. Thank you.
Excellent work. Excellent work, ladies and gentlemen. Liked it very much. Very consistent, smooth flowing. Well done.